morning students, I am Mashmi Prasad and creator of this channel Digital Generation. This channel is regarding chapter wise preparation for both ICSE and CBSE students. I hope you will get best knowledge and explanation from this channel. Today we are going to study about metals and non-metals in chemistry. There are 115 elements known to us at present, and all the elements are divided mainly into two groups, metals and non-metals. So how can we understand which elements are metals and which elements are non-metals? Metals are those elements which loses or donates electrons in the chemical reaction and forms positive charge ions except hydrogen. So metals are also known as electropositive elements. All metals are solid in room temperature except mercury, which is a liquid metal. Metals have many important characteristic properties. Metals are malleable and ductile. Metals are hard and strong. Metals have high melting and boiling point, and metals are lustrous and they are sonorous. But there are some exceptions in each cases. The most abundant metal in the earth crust is aluminium, which occupies about 7% of the earth crust. And second most abundant metal in the earth crust is iron, which occupies about 4% of the earth crust. Metals are used for various purposes in our daily life. As metals are very hard and strong substances, so metals are used for constructing of bridges, railway lines, and metals are used for making heavy machineries. Metals are also used for making cars, buses, trains, trucks, etc. Metals have many other uses in our daily life. We will study them later on. Now we will study about non-metals. Which elements are called non-metals? Non-metals are those elements which form negative ions by gaining or accepting electrons except hydrogen. It is a positive ion. We always write hydrogen plus, though hydrogen is a non-metal, but it is positively charged ion. So non-metals are called electronegative elements. At present, there are 22 non-metals known to us. Among these 22 non-metals, 10 non-metals are solids like carbon, sulfur, phosphorus, silicon, and there are also other solid non-metals. And the only liquid non-metal is bromine. Thus, bromine is a liquid non-metal, and the other rest 11 non-metals are gases like oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, chlorine, and all other inert gases are non-metals. The most abundant non-metal in the earth crust is oxygen, which occupies about 50% of the earth crust. And the second most abundant non-metal is silicon, which occupies about 26% of the earth crust. Though non-metals are very small in number, only there are 22 non-metals, but these non-metal forms the main constituent of air, earth and water. For example, the two non-metals like oxygen and nitrogen forms the main composition of air, and the two non-metals like oxygen and silicon form the main composition of earth, and the two non-metals like oxygen and hydrogen forms the main composition of water. Chlorine is also a non-metal which is present in the form of chlorides in ocean. Non-metals are very important in our everyday life. Without the presence of non-metal, life would not have become possible on earth. For example, carbon is the most important non-metal because all the life on earth is based on carbon compounds. This is because fats, proteins, vitamins, carbohydrates and enzymes all are made of carbon compounds, which are very essential for the growth and development of the lives. The oxygen is another non-metal which is equally important because all the living organisms breathe, and without the presence of oxygen, life could not exist. So oxygen is very important for breathing of the living organisms, and oxygen is also important for combustion of fuels. Nitrogen is another non-metal which helps in controlling the rate of combustion. Sulfur is a non-metal which is found in wool, hair, onion and garlic. Hydrogen is a non-metal which is used for preparing vanaspati ghee. Non-metals are used for making fertilizers, acids, detergents, explosives and many other things. So non-metals are very important in our everyday life. All the metals in general have some common properties, and similarly the non-metals in general also have some common properties, but the properties of the metal is quite different from that of the non-metal. So we will study and compare the properties of metal and non-metal, by which we can understand that they are metal or non-metal. For example, metals are malleable and ductile. Malleability and ductility is the main characteristic property of metal. Malleable means if the metals are hammered, then they form thin sheets without breaking. And ductility means metals can be drawn into thin wires without breaking. Whereas non-metals are neither malleable nor ductile. Now we will discuss this point vividly. Metals are malleable and ductile. The most malleable metals are silver and gold, and for this reason metals are used for making ornaments and utensils. As metals are malleable or they can be drawn into thin sheets or foils, so silver foil is used for decorating sweets. Similarly, aluminum is a metal and aluminum foil is used for packing food items like chocolates, medicines, cigarettes, biscuits, etc. Metals are also very ductile, that is, they can be drawn into thin wires, and for this reason electric wires are made of copper and aluminum. The most ductile metal is gold. For example, if we take 1 gram of gold, then it can be drawn into a thin wire of 2 km long. Because of this characteristic property of metal, that is, the metals are malleable and ductile, metals can be given different shapes and can be used for making different articles according to our need. On the other hand, as non-metals are non-malleable and non-ductile, so they are easily breakable like graphite, and non-metals are also called brittle. This brittleness is the characteristic property of solid non-metals. If we take sulfur or phosphorus and hammer it, then it will break easily. So we can say that non-metals are brittle. Second most important property of metal is that generally metals are good conductor of heat and electricity. On the other hand, non-metals are not good conductor of heat and electricity, though there are some exceptions. Metals are good conductor of heat because they have free electrons. So when metals are heated, then the atoms of the metal starts vibrating, and the atoms of the metal then transfer this heat energy to the electrons. And we know that electrons are free to move. So when electron travels from one atom to another atom of the metal, they transfer heat from one atom to another atom. In this way, the metals are good conductor of heat. It will be very clear for us if we take an example. If we take an aluminum rod, because aluminum is a metal, and fix some nails by wax and then clamp it on one side and then heat it with burner on another side, we will see that when the left end of the aluminum rod is heated by a burner, then the nails which are fixed to it by the wax starts falling one by one from left to right. This is because when the metal aluminum rod is heated, then the atoms of the aluminum starts vibrating vigorously and then transfers the heat from one atom to another. So the nails which are on the extreme left hand of the aluminum rod starts falling first, and the nails which are on the right hand side of the aluminum rod falls later. Thus we can see that all the iron nails falls one by one starting from left to right. So we can say that heat is being transferred in the metal aluminum rod from left to right. Silver metal is the best conductor of heat and lead is the poorest conductor of heat. Metals are good conductor of electricity and silver is the best conductor of electricity. Metals are used for making electric wires because of this characteristic property of metal. This is the characteristic property of the metals because metals offer least resistance to the flow of electrons. So they are used for making electric wires. Copper and aluminum are mostly used for making electric wires. These electric wires are coated by PVC, polyvinyl chloride, which acts as insulator and thus prevent us from getting electric shock. On the other hand, non-metals are neither good conductor of heat nor electricity. There is an exception. Graphite is a non-metal which is an allotropic form of carbon and is a good conductor of electricity, and thus graphite is used for making electrodes. Number third, metals are lustrous and can be polished, whereas on the other hand, non-metals are non-lustrous, or we can say that non-metals are dull in appearance. Because the metals are lustrous, so metals are used for making ornaments and as a reflector. Silver is the best reflector of light and gold is used for making ornaments. Sometimes when the metals are left for a long period of time, then they appear to be dull. This is because of the formation of the thin film of oxides, carbonates or sulfides by the slow action of the gases present in the air. If these dull metals are rubbed with sandpaper, then they become lustrous again. On the other hand, we have studied that non-metals are non-lustrous and they are dull in appearance except iodine, which is a lustrous non-metal. Number 4. Metals are sonorous. That is, if the metals are hit by an object, then they produces deep ringing sound. And for this characteristic property of the metal are used for making bells and for making string of the musical instrument. On the other hand, non-metals are non-sonorous. That is, they do not produce sound when hit by an object. Number 5. All the metals are solid in nature except mercury, which is a liquid metal. On the other hand, non-metals are solids like carbon, phosphorus, sulfur, silicon, liquid like bromine, and gases like oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, chlorine, and all the inert gases. Thus, we can say that non-metals are solid, liquid, and gases. Number 6. Metals are hard and strong substances. On the other hand, non-metals are not hard and not strong substances. For example, iron is very strong, so iron is used for making bridges, for construction of buildings, and for railway lines. But there are some exceptions in metals which are not strong and neither hard. For example, sodium and potassium. These metals are so soft that they can be cut with a knife. On the other hand, non-metals are not hard and not strong. But there is an exception in case of diamond. Diamond is an allotropic form of carbon which is a non-metal, and diamond is the hardest substance known to us at present. And non-metals are not strong because if we take a thin sheet of graphite and then put a heavy load on it, then this graphite sheet gets snapped. That is, the graphite sheet breaks, as because non-metals are not capable of holding large weights. Number 7. Metals have high melting and boiling point, and non-metals have low melting and boiling point. For example, the melting point of iron is 1535 degrees centigrade and that of copper is 1083 degrees centigrade. But there are some exceptions like sodium and potassium. These are alkali metals, but they have low melting and boiling point. Sodium has a melting point of 98 degrees centigrade and that of potassium, the melting point is 64 degrees centigrade. There are two metals like gallium and cesium. They have very low melting and boiling point. The melting point of gallium is 30 degrees centigrade and the melting point of cesium is 28 degrees centigrade. These two metals, gallium and cesium, have so low melting point that they start melting when they are taken in hand and melts by the body temperature. On the other hand, we have studied that non-metals have low melting and boiling point. For example, the melting point of sulfur is 115 degrees centigrade, which is quite low. But the melting point of diamond, which is an allotropic form of carbon, has a melting point of 3500 degrees centigrade. The melting point of diamond is 3500 degrees centigrade, which is very high. So these are the exceptions in case of non-metals. Next point, metals have high densities. That is, they are heavy substances. For example, the density of iron is 7.8 gram per centimeter cube. But the exceptions are sodium and potassium. The density of sodium and potassium is quite low. The density of sodium is 0.97 gram per centimeter cube and the density of potassium is 0.86 gram per centimeter cube. On the other hand, non-metals have low densities. For example, the density of sulfur is 2 gram per centimeter cube and the density of diamond is 3.53 gram per centimeter cube. Next point, metals are usually silver or grey in color except gold, which is yellow in color, and copper, which is reddish brown in color. On the other hand, non-metals are of various color. For example, sulfur is yellow in color, phosphorus is white and red in color, graphite is a non-metal which is an allotropic form of carbon, is black in color, chlorine is a non-metal gas which is yellowish green in color, and the gases like oxygen and hydrogen are colorless gases. From the above discussions of metals and non-metals, it is obviously clear that metals and non-metals cannot be classified on the basis of their physical properties. So we have to consider the chemical properties of metals and non-metals to classify them whether they are metal or non-metal. So in our next video, we will study about the chemical properties of metal, and then we will study about the chemical properties of non-metals. Digital generation is coming up with another new stage, quizzing with digital generation. Here we will discuss MCQs from physics, chemistry and biology separately and regularly. So keep watching Quizzing with Digital Generation. Thank you for watching my video, and if you find my video useful, please do like and share my video and subscribe my channel to get the latest update of my videos. And if you have any doubt regarding this topic, comment below. I will try to answer as early as possible.